Oh, it's a goal. Who got the assist? Who got the assist?
Hello, everyone. Hope you had a lovely Easter. We're here on a Wednesday just so you can witness the pain/glory of Arsenal playing out the final game of double game week 33 while we pod. So we're as up to date as we can be. And yeah, chip season is 2/3 done, or well, wholly done for me, for many people. And here we are feeling it again like, well, I'm not going to say that because we're an FPL podcast, but could have been better. Perhaps one thing that perhaps couldn't have been much better was my time with Ross at FPL Wrapped on his pod yesterday. I think it came up today. Actually, that's FPL Therapy. Do go and check that out if you want to hear basically some elements of this pod in a slightly different format. But yeah, I guess I'm nicely limbered up for talking about free hit, despite not being in a free hit myself, having wasted it this week. Anyway, here we go. We've got to talk about it, haven't we? Anyway, joined by Sam as always. How are you, mate? All good? That's a terrible word to use, isn't it? Are you on even keel?
Yeah, I mean, outside of FPL, life is fine. And I always try to remind myself of that when I go into an FPL podcast where my season is just capitulating around me at the moment. But yeah, it's still a game. So you can still have a smile on your face. And by the way, I was saying to you off air, but it was a really good show with Ross on FPL Therapy. So well done. You represented the pod really well, Tom. And I do strongly recommend, if you haven't had a chance to go listen to that, do go and do so. They had a very good rapport, and hopefully we can get Ross on the show to do some behavioral psychology over the pre-season, because I think that'd be a really good show. In the meantime, though, distractions aside, we do have to talk about FPL and Game Week 33, which is still going on in the background, isn't it, Tom? Although we kind of wish it wasn't, let's be honest. In the meantime, we are Who Got the Assist. On today's pod, team updates, which will be interesting, to say the least, as it has been recently. Then we'll dive straight into a free hit kit. I am on free hit, Tom isn't. So we will still be looking at things like your classic game week preview, including Kneejerk, best transfers, bold claims, best captains, for those of you who aren't on a free hit, as well as those of you who are. So hopefully this pod will be relevant to all of you, despite the title. Of course, we will have a look at my free hit and open up the debate around differentials and different players that you can be bringing in, not just for free transfers, but also to pad out your side on a free hit. And of course, we'll be finishing off with how our teams are set up, although we're using my current free hit draft as kind of the point to go off of to begin with on the pod. So we'll probably skim past mine at the end. It is Wednesday, the 23rd of April. We're at halftime in the Arsenal Palace game. It's currently 2-1 to Arsenal. And a certain someone's triple captain isn't on the pitch. So shall we have a quick look at our game week reviews as it currently stands, which could be a barrel of laughs?
Yeah, laugh. We laugh to hide the pain, Sam. That's what we do.
We do indeed.
That meme, aren't we, right now, of the smiling face, smiling mask in front of the angry face. Yeah, I mean, it's not quite paid
Do you
off.
want to start with yours, or should we start with mine?
Oh, let's just get the what sandwich out of the way, shall we?
Okay.
I mean, it's yeah.
Right, so I'm on 46 points at the moment with my triple captain active on Saka. Look, I want to just quickly close the book on Saka because it was a risk going for him. I expected his X-Mins to be a bit higher than those that predicted it to be a little bit lower, maybe one bench, one start. And actually, I was pretty confident of the start against Crystal Palace, less confident of the start against Ipswich. So when he actually was starting that first game, I felt very, very confident on my pick on triple captain. I think the first game, if it wasn't for the ankle tackle, if you call it a tackle, from Leif Davis on Saka in the first half, he might have gotten a bit longer and he'd probably be starting today. So I do feel a little bit unfortunate there. And I feel even more unfortunate given he missed a couple of big chances, created a lot for Marino. Obviously, there was the ghost assist that just touched Ødegaard as well. So I do feel a little bit hard done by, but these things happen in FPL. It's not it's not all on that. It's also I did take a risk on the X-Mins because I was chasing ranks. So I shouldn't be overly surprised if a player that's been wrapped up in cotton wool a little bit gets a knock and then doesn't play the second game. So that is on me, and I will try and learn from that. Elsewhere, it's been a car crash as well. So I've had clean sheets from the first match for Arsenal on the double, Raya and Saliba. That's fine. And then obviously conceded tonight. Munoz and Gavardiol actually got returns, so clean sheets for each of them in the first match, not so much in the second. And then all the way through, I'm just actually reminding myself, none of my 7 attackers have got an attacking return yet. So Asensio, car crash. Sarr, 2-pointer, isn't on yet. Mateta, the same thing for the second game today. Salah blanked. Obviously, Saka's on a blank. Isak and Marmoush all blanking. So it's been a great week, Tom. No differentials have come through for me. My only returners were my back 4, well, including my keeper, and triple captain, an all-timer failure as it currently stands. It's on the level of Mane all those seasons ago, and it'll be another one for the record books on the back of a pretty record-breaking bench boost last week as well. So it's been a tough couple of weeks for me, but getting all my luck out and bad variants out the way for this season and go again next year. Because let's be honest, my season is over. I'm down to 400k. I've lost 100k in rank on a triple captain this week. So it's over. I can do whatever I want at this point and just try and save a bit of face, but I need to try and learn some lessons for next year, I think.
Let's call you karmic justice next year when you're in the top 100 at this point. But yeah, I mean, it's so. I think you're right to kind of just be philosophical about it and think that, yeah, okay, we both had a decent hunch that he would start both games, right? And I think that you're right that the act of God, or whatever you want to call it, the act of Leif Davis raking his Achilles, is basically what's set you apart from 2 starts. And in the one start that he did get, I mean, it's absolutely unreal, isn't it? That he's the one player who doesn't return, and the whole Arsenal team scoring points apart from him like that is just insane. And I think it just sums up the what's happened this season for you, to lesser extent for me, but definitely for you, in that every time there has been an advantage to be gained. So Marmoush, chalk captain this week, both times you've had Saka then play on afterwards. First game, Ipswich, he starts. You're thinking, this is incredible. What an opportunity this is. Missed the 1-on-1, could have gotten a couple of assists, and then is dragged off in the 57th with heavy strapping and on his ankle, and the ice pack on his ankle as he leaves the stadium. And then tonight, you're kind of thinking, well, there's probably a good chance he starts. No, because maybe there's something going on there. So, it's really difficult, and yeah, it's probably just one of those things you just be phlegmatic about and think, what, next year is what it's going to be. Maybe this year just punt it to hell, because what's between 400k and 700k, captain is out this week, and die in 35 for Ipswich. Just do these kinds of crazy things. Well, why not? At the end of the day, like, why not? Like, if it's going to be a rank that you're not going to be particularly proud of either way, yeah, I mean, we'll definitely come to that. But yeah, it's I know how disappointed you are, and yeah, it is really difficult when you get to this point. So sounds like you're not quite as bad as you could be. I know there are a few people who would be rage quitting, but I suppose maybe having a podcast co-hosting gig as well as your own channel maybe means that it's probably a harder thing to do than for most people.
I've got obligations, Tom. I've got a family to feed. I need that £5 from monetization. It's big for me. So no, I mean, look, jokes aside, we come on every week. I'm having a bad season, but it's such a small part of life, and if I can't then watch football the next week and still enjoy the football side of it, then what am I doing even playing? So it's a tough season. It's not a rank I'm happy with, but it's still a game I enjoy generally. And if you don't enjoy it because you're having a bad rank, then it's probably a time to take a step back. But I still do enjoy it. So I'll go again. And these things happen, eh? It's just a game at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, that's a very the right thing to say. So I've ended up on 65 so far, which is a green arrow. So I think kind of broadly what happened, the reasoning was correct in terms of what I was trying to do. So remove those Palace players principally, went against them, went for Watkins, who did score 12 versus Mateta's 2, went for Bowen versus Sarr, who hasn't started. So neither of Mateta or Sarr have started tonight. Bowen scored, and then Bradley and Munoz have kind of washed their faces. De Bruyne, player I brought in, another player I brought in, got 1 bonus last night, so up to 6. And then Luis Diaz, who put in a man of the match performance, but neglected to score any actual points, frustratingly. Kind of meant my free hit kind of stayed as it is, and not having a Trossard, not having a Bumo, has just meant that unfortunately it's just not quite happened. So I've kind of got a small green arrow, and all of my major rank threats, they all sort of didn't do anything. But yeah, same situation as you with Saka, really. And then next week I've got to basically tread water a little bit. It basically hasn't done what I wanted it to do, which was to try and get me a little bit closer to that top 100k. I'm still kind of 22 points off. The OR has gone from 180k to 170k or 160k, something like that. But it's just not really been much of a success, to say the least. So yeah, a bit frustrating, really frustrating, in fact. But it is what it is, and I'm just waiting to kind of get a confirmation of a red arrow when someone comes on. I don't want to come on to score a goal.
Hopefully Saka.
Yeah, well, hopefully Saka. Well, Saka would be someone I want to come on to score a goal. But I was thinking more like Mateta or Sarr coming on to get the equaliser.
Yeah,
which would be good for you, but terrible for me. So yeah, I mean. Yeah, these things happen. I'm not too. I'm kind of over the threshold where it's not all over for me quite yet. But yeah, next week I think I am going to have to accept a pretty decent L on where I am with my team. I've got 8 players. I'm now probably down to 7 actually, because Jose Sarr, my goalkeeper, decided to get injured and go down the tunnel pre-game in the Wolves game. So I'm down to 7. So I don't know. I think I was always going to have to take a hit here, which is not the ideal situation to be in. But I was hoping that this week the upside would kind of cover it, and it hasn't happened. Such is the story of this season, which has been 2 steps forward, 1 step back the entire time, as reflected in my tiny green arrow, which I'm currently on. Whether that's sustained, who knows? Yeah. So I share your sentiments. It's been difficult.
On that note, though, I will say you have been unlucky, and I think you made a really good call on going for some of the single game week players here. The Bowen, obviously Bradley and Diaz as well. I think you got a little bit unlucky not to get more out of, and Watkins as well, which we knew was a risk. So I think a lot of the decisions you made have a lot of logic and were just sound decisions, and you were probably just a little bit unfortunate that they didn't spike the amount of positive variance that they deserved, obviously with Saka included in that, but we've gone over him a little bit already. I think you can feel a bit hard done by this week, because looking at your team, I'm thinking that should have scored more points based on how they actually performed on the pitch. So I think you were quite unlucky there.
Yeah, you've got to be sanguine about it, haven't you? Really, that's the only way you can possibly be. So, on to this week coming. I know that lots of other people are on a free hit, and obviously I've already done one podcast looking at all the different variables of a free hit. I think this time what might be quite good, apologies again that it's quite formulaic, it's not kind of usually what we do on WTA, but for this week is the final one of the trilogy, where we look squarely at the week ahead. But this time around, I think the first thing to do is to look at free hits, how that's kind of coming across. And Sam, you've got a free hit draft that you're now really put together. I think that maybe we'll have to kind of discuss if you're playing safe and if you're being a bit risky, and kind of how the sword versus shield profile sort of works. I don't know. I'm sure that in a few areas you may have been a tiny bit more risky because of where you are, but we'll certainly see. But yeah, many managers now put in their free hit, of course. And I think you're probably going to end up looking at quite a lot of the, I assume be the majority of the engaged core of FPL managers playing the free hit now, right?
Yeah, you'd think so. And I think some of the polls I've seen going around in terms of engaged managers, because otherwise you wouldn't be registering your opinion in a poll. I think it's something like 65% on average that I've seen tend to be free hitting this week. So it's very popular amongst those of us still playing the game avidly. I am on that strategy. So I've put together a free hit at the moment. I talked about a draft earlier on my channel. It's changed a little bit since, but not tons. And there are, I would say, a pool of maybe 30 players that seem to be doing the rounds. Obviously 15 on screen now. And then I've got 4 or 5 extras in each position that we can run through as well, which probably rounds off about 30, 35. So actually, weirdly, you talked about going against the template and being differential to just kind of punt it a little bit. I've weirdly gone the other way, and it's probably a bad idea rank-wise because it's probably not going to get me as far as maybe if I did take a few risks. But if I've learned anything in the last couple of weeks, it's that going against the crowd for the sake of going against the crowd has just sent me further backwards than I want to be. And in a weird way, I've come out of it feeling I almost want to use the last few weeks as like a mindset change of, okay, you need to lock in on how you're going to play the game next season. I'm going for high X minutes players. I'm going for the penalty takers. I'm going for the ones that I can trust and rely on based on a long patch of data, far less on the, I reckon he's probably good for a start this week, but maybe not next week kind of thing. And although it's a free hit, so you can do those 1 weekers, looking at my team right now, it's a lot of household names that you would think you can trust based on a long sample size. So for those on audio, probably the biggest surprise, because I haven't seen him in many, is that I've gone with Alisson in goal at home to Tottenham. Now, Tottenham aren't a bad attack by any means, but I do expect them to rotate and have one eye on the Europa League semi-final. Liverpool's defence has been very good. And I believe they've got, is it 4 or 5 clean sheets in the last 10? So they're still running pretty decently defensively. And so I don't mind him. There are alternatives in the shape of Leno, possibly Pope, but I've got a Newcastle triple up already. Into defence, Livramento and Shah, so Newcastle double up defensively at the moment. Ait-Nouri is the lock. I would say he's the most obvious pick defensively for me right now. I think he's got the most attacking returns out of all defenders in the game, which I only learned, I think it was this morning, via FPL therapy, Tom. So if I'm wrong, that will be why. Into midfield, Luis Diaz and Salah as the Liverpool double. Mbeumo, Palmer and Cliver at the moment completing midfield 5. Up top, it's Isak and Cunha. Welbeck bench, number 1, although I do like Welbeck this week. Cucurella and Sessegnon with Leno as the bench keeper. So that's where I'm at right now. Any particular positions you want to start off talking about?
So we've got a question in from Dave CZ.
Mm-hmm.
Friend the pod, which teams do you think it's worth doubling up on in defence and any for triple attack? So I think maybe should we talk about compounds, and maybe that leads us maybe to defence first, because you've got Livramento and Cher both in. I do really like Cher as a pickup for free hitters. I think that he gets that in terms of having eye for goal. We know that he's got that, and he's the one that you're kind of looking to spike variance with, isn't he? Really, scored a couple of, is it 2 and 2 or something like that, and the first player to hit the crossbar from his own half as well, which is quite a nice little trivia question for future years. I suppose what's really interesting about that in terms of doubling up on defence, so 1, doubling up on defence, and 2, the fact that you've got both of them means that you don't have a Barnes and don't have a Murphy, and both of them are kind of a bit of a pinch point for a lot of people. And I like how you've kind of gone, right, okay, I'm gonna just completely absent myself from that situation of trying to deal with who's playing, and instead just kind of go, right, okay, it's Ipswich, who aren't the most attacking team in terms of the underlying data, further from bottom as you would probably expect in terms of XG this year. I'm going to shove it in defence and kind of hope to spike it with a Livramento assist and then a shared goal. I think that makes a lot of sense. So although it feels like if you are doubling up on defence, Newcastle are probably the way to go, aren't they? So yeah, should we start in the defensive area and cover the defenders and maybe the goalkeeper as well? So I know there's a few shouts. I've seen a few teams for Nick Pope in as well. I know Ross's team had Nick Pope, for example.
Yeah, goalkeeper is the one I'm probably having the most trouble with, and it really depends on the combinations with the outfield defenders. So I don't mind, and I've seen a comment in the chat as well about no Fulham starting against Southampton. I don't mind going Leno over Alisson in particular, but I don't know which Fulham player you'd feel safe with at the moment. So Jimenez up top, fine, but I prefer Isak, I prefer Cunha, I prefer Welbeck, I prefer Evanilson. Even if Jimenez gets 80, 90 minutes with Munoz out, I still don't love it more than those players. So probably not him. In midfield, I don't think someone like an Iwobi's getting in ahead of any of these, and probably another 4 or 5 after these 5. And then it leaves you defensively with a Sessegnon, great attacking data, but like I said, ex-Min's risk. He's got competition on that right wing from Wilson, who came on in his place in the last game week, and Traore as well can play there, as well as Willian. And let's not forget, it's Southampton. They could rotate. They don't need to play their full strength 11 to beat us. So I don't feel that safe on Sessegnon. Robinson would be the safer one, but away at Southampton, I kind of do actually back Southampton to get 1 goal in that.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
like we have been scoring relatively like 1 a game for quite a while now. It's not like Leicester where we just cannot get the ball in the net. So although I like the fixture a lot, I'm just not sure which player I like in that team, which led me to Alisson in goal over Leno for now. Chelsea defence, I think I'd go Cucurella ahead of Sanchez. Neither of it make it into my starting 11 right now. And Livramento and Shah, I do want triple Newcastle at home to Ipswich. I think that is one of the 2 best fixtures to target this week, alongside Leicester at home for Wolves. So given that, again, the X minutes on Barnes, Murphy, Gordon, there's just a little question mark there. And I like a lot of other midfielders. It seemed easier to go with the defensive double up, where I think the minutes are a bit more secure. You can spike a bit of variance from a sharp goal potentially. And Livramento has looked really attacking as well. So that's the logic I've kind of fallen down on with the goalkeeper and defenders. Ait-Nouri, I haven't really mentioned because he's just almost an automatic pick at this point at home to Leicester, who don't score, and his attacking data is fantastic as well. It's just a pretty simple pick for me. I don't think I've seen him not in a free hit draft yet.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on Ait-Nouri. I just don't think that's even a question, really. I like your reasoning on the rest of it. I think that with Fulham, you look at it and you think the fixture's really good, right? We've both fallen into the pitfall this year of backing against Southampton, and it was
Several times.
On paper it was a fantastic thing. In practice, it has been an absolute disaster.
Awful.
I just feel like in every position, bar the goalkeeper, there are better players.
Yeah.
Sessegnon would be the only one, if he hadn't have gone off with what was reported on the match feeds as a potential injury, and if Wilson wasn't back fit, he's probably the only one that I'd think, yeah, okay, I'd put him in. But the rest of them, they're crowded out, honestly. Like, it won't be in midfield. Great differential. If someone goes there, I'm not going to say no, because I do like it. I think he's second to Jimenez this year for goal involvement for Fulham. Fine. If you went for Jimenez up front, fine. But I also kind of quite like Isaac. I also quite like Cunha. I like Evan Nilsson above him. I even like Hella Wisser above him at the moment.
Yeah, I'd back that as well. And Woods.
Yeah, and Wood, like, I feel like they all of their players, apart from maybe Leno and goal, where he's in the top 3, they're all kind of a little bit further down the list. And maybe that's wrong. Maybe we'll see Robinson assisting Sessegnon and some Maverick out there with double Fulham defenders going to pay off. And they are the 3rd best defence for XGC this year. The only kind of downsides over the last 10 weeks, it's not been that way. They're kind of mid-table at the moment. So I think kind of defensive double-ups, there are some options out there. I just kind of feel like if in your situation you've kind of solved the need to have the Newcastle midfielder by kind of saying, yeah, right, I want Chopper Newcastle. Share probably going to be some attacking. Livramento, we definitely know that he does get forward, although kind of his actual impact is muted. So I don't mind it. I don't mind that at all. I don't think there's anything that kind of screams, right, I need a defensive double up this week. There's no sort of gimme, really. But a Cucurella, I think, is probably quite close. So if you were really set on Barnes, for example, and you weren't sure about your 3rd defender, I think you're going to go 3-4-3 or 3-5-2. I don't think there's much doubt about that. If you weren't sure about your 3rd defender, then I'd say, right, Cucurella, throw him in. Everton have kind of, I think, recovered from the new manager bounce. Recovered, that's not quite the right word. They've evened out after new manager bounce, right? They're not scoring those low SG chances anymore. So I think that game could be a little bit of a toothless one. So maybe you'd be looking at him and thinking, okay, right, Cucurella, might be all right for a clean sheet, and who knows, maybe some sort of attack in return. But yeah, I quite like the solve of having the two Newcastle defenders. It's just that recently they have dropped off defensively. And I think that but I think that that's kind of all right. I don't really see much problem with that at all. And I think that, Newcastle defense can be heavily owned, so it might be one of those things where you look at it and you just think, well, right, actually, I may be able to gain from having two Newcastle players, at least get like double 6 points or something. Yeah, I don't know about Alisson though. There's something about Tottenham actually seeming to somehow score a goal every time. He's due. I think he'll get saves. I don't know. Maybe I would kind of. Well, that's difficult, isn't it? I think it's probably the least impactful position, nonetheless. So you kind of feel like you might as well throw Alisson in almost.
I'm going ex-league win a little bit there, and also like I think at times or at least I do anyway. Not saying you do, but sometimes I overplay the importance of the fixture and underplay the importance of how good the team is. And Liverpool are a very good defense and at home at Anfield about to win the league. So to a certain extent, I'm leaning more into that element of it. And also Alisson is one of, if not the world's best keeper as well, in my personal opinion. He's absolutely fantastic. So if anyone's going to stop a Spurs who have got an eye on the Europa League semi-final from scoring, it would probably be him. So yeah, I don't know. As the week's going on, I'm growing more bullish on Alisson, as maybe I'm just getting a little bit more like set in my ways on it. The alternative, I don't mind whatsoever. If I get a little bit more bullish on either Cucurella or Sessegnon, maybe with Cucurella, maybe I think the clean sheet odds are a little bit higher than I do currently. Or with Sessegnon, I think there's a better chance that he gets 70, 80 minutes. I might remove one of my Newcastle defenders, probably Livramento, put in Cucurella / Sessegnon, whichever one I become more interested in. And then Alisson becomes Pope. So that's a way of me just still having the Newcastle double defense and then having either Cucurella or Sessegnon as well, instead of that Liverpool defense. As it stands right now, I'm fairly happy with this, but yeah, those are probably the positions where I'm most liable to changing at this point in time. Those little combinations in defense and in goal could switch up.
I think, if we're tiering, I think that the goalkeeper almost feels a bit immaterial. I don't know, that sounds a bit silly, but it sort of does. Like, it could be, you can make a good case for anybody.
Yeah.
In defense, Aït-Nouri is the stick on. He's in basically any team. A Newcastle defender of some kind is probably second place in any team. Third, I think it depends on your view of Barnes versus Murphy, almost, which sounds a bit silly, but it kind of is. And you can probably make a case to say, right, okay, I'm going to stick two of the second place players, second place team in my defense, which is what you've done. Cucurella, I would kind of put him as being third. If it wasn't for all those caveats surrounding Sessegnon, I'd have him in third and like one to attack on the free hit. But there's just a few too many buts at the moment. For me to be thinking, he's probably worth it. But yeah, Cucurella is probably one that I would have a bit of pause for thought here on, Sam. But as we move to your midfield here, you kind of start to get the picture for why he's not in place. If you are thinking, right, I need to have more Newcastle players, the only thing you might think about would be Pope in goal, and then you play Cucurella. That might be the only thing you might possibly do. Have Share. I think I do Share over Livramento, if anyone's wondering, and then you do Pope in goal, and you have Cucurella on the pitch. I think that maybe that would be a smaller. I think probably that's what I would do, because I'm not too sure about Alisson, but it sounds like you're a bit more sort of down that road right now.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've been changing this draft all day, and like I just said, if I was to make a change, it would probably be Livramento comes out, Cucurella in, upgraded to my starter, and then it would be Pope in goal, like I just said. So yeah, I think we're very much on the same mindset right now. It's maybe 51 this, 49 that, but yeah, Cucurella is definitely in my mind. He's a bit of a bonus points monster as well. So yeah, that he could easily sneak in. Quickly before we move on to midfielders, a couple we haven't mentioned that would be in consideration. Kirkes at home to United, who also have an eye on the Europa League semi-final, maybe. Probably not quite making it in for me at the moment. Then you've got Trent and Van Dijk potentially as a little bit differential. Trent, if you back the minutes, I've gone off of him a little bit because I think he either gets 30 or 60 or maybe 65. And then Trippier as the alternative Newcastle defender. He is on some set pieces, not all, and his attacking threat has gone way, way down. So that's why I've not included him ahead of Livramento or Shaw at this point.
Yeah, Virgil van Dijk for X minutes, definitely. And also, X captain goal for X title win, smashing the badge, new contracts, everything. There's potential there. Andrew in the chat has just said about that. So there's plenty of other fullbacks to choose first, as he says. But yeah, I think also there are going to be people kind of thinking, I need free Liverpool for that particular game. So another one to bear in mind. I think I probably would just about favour Cucurella over him, but I mean Chelsea haven't exactly been any great shakes. The underlying defensive data is still good though, despite kind of lots of errors creeping into their game, which I think have been kind of quite well publicised over the last 10 weeks. Said on the therapy yesterday, they've done pretty well. So yeah, that might be a change you would make. Moving to midfield and kind of moving on to kind of what Dave was saying about triple attack. So you've gone for basically a lot of pen takers and then Luis Diaz with Bumo, Palmer, Kluivert and Salah. We'll talk about captaincy later, but yeah, I think it's probably Salah just for the contextual factors effectively. Kluivert, Palmer, Bumo and Diaz all make a lot of sense. Diaz, you want another extra piece of Liverpool action. Exact same reason I went for him this week. Makes a lot of sense. Kluivert, Palmer, Bumo, I mean, they're all players who are in the mix for most people for the week ahead. I do like Jared Bowen, for example, in the Brighton game. I feel like that's just going to be wrought with unpredictability, which does tend to lead to a fair few goals. Brighton, hardly the most defensively sound team, 11 goals conceded in the last 4 games. And Bowen, the talisman there at West Ham. And I mean, there are kind of other players potentially knocking at the door, the likes of like Iwobi. It's probably that's probably the best kind of 5 that I can come up with, to be honest, because Kluivert for United as well, given United's kind of current predicament and how they're approaching the league, he does feel like your best sort of Bournemouth sort of cover off, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's him or Evan Nilsson. We'll come on to Evan Nilsson in a moment. I am pretty hot on him as well. But I've narrowed it down to like 9 midfielders that I would be pretty interested in owning. Salah's a lock, so that brings it down to the remaining 8. So 4 from 8. The 4 that I've currently got, obviously, Diaz, Mbeumo, Palmer, Kluivert, 3 of which are on penalties, Diaz not. And then there are 4 alternatives. You've mentioned one already, Bowen, that I do really like. Fernandez, I don't mind, but maybe I've put him at the bottom of this whole list just because he didn't start game week 33. Maybe with Europa League semi-final on the way, they've got one eye on just keeping him fresh for that. He doesn't usually miss any games, so I still think there's a good chance he starts and plays, but it would be enough to put me off maybe. Not an easy fixture at Bournemouth either. And then it's the 2 Newcastle boys. You've got Barnes and you've got Murphy. And as I mentioned, one of them will probably get 80 minutes, but I don't know which one it will be at this point. It might not be either of them either as well. So although probably one of them will, I reckon 4 out of the 5 on screen probably get 85 plus, and 4 of them have penalties. So I think Barnes and Bowen are the 2 that are really tempting me to somehow find a way to squeeze in on a free hit. But honestly, out of these 5, I don't know who I'm sacrificing. And I know a lot of people will probably say Palmer, given his form, but he's still a 90-minute talisman on penalties with a good home fixture. And who are we to say when form turns around that it could easily swap on a coin flip almost, and all it takes is a dodgy penalty and he could be straight back at it as well. So yeah, I just don't know who I'd take out of these 5 to squeeze in a Bowen or a Barnes. and because it's tight between these 5 and Barnes, that's why I think it's maybe a little bit safer, or it's a bit more convenient to have double Newcastle defense for me, because it removes that question mark. And I think that the double Newcastle defense is a little bit further ahead than the difference between all of the other defenders and the midfielders versus Barnes.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with that reasoning completely, and I quite like the fact that you've got the kind of the added extra of the pens for a lot of those players. To take a few sort of points here, Diaz versus Jota, that could be one that could be quite interesting if the predictors do turn around and think that Jota's going to be starting. That might be one where I'd be thinking, right, okay, I'm going to chance my arm on Jota, honestly, because Diaz has been playing as the 9 in a lot of ways, but I do think Diaz, Jota, Salah is probably the front three, which kind of makes the most sense for Liverpool as it is. So that might be one to differentiate potentially. If you're looking to go there, like I wouldn't say no to someone who says, right, I really fancy Jota for this week. I've got good memories of owning Jota as differential during free hit week. Last year he scored me kind of 12. He got me a goal and an assist out of nowhere when no one owned him, and that really helped to get that green arrow that week. So he might be a player that you might think just to kind of tweak a tiny bit in terms of the Diaz situation, but I mean I don't mind Diaz at all. Like, he's just doing everything really, and he seems to be kind of staying on the pitch for obviously prodigiously fit, and starting as the 9 and moving over to the left when a Jota comes on for a Gakpo sort of thing. But Gakpo has no great shakes in the last game, so Jota, if he does start the next game, could be quite an interesting differential, especially because it seems like opinions hardened around Diaz this week.
Yeah, no, agreed. I like him as a differential. I'm just a little bit worried that if anyone comes off, it will be him. And we know Slot likes a 59th, 58th minute sub. So given some of my recent problems in FPL, Saka, Mateta as well as a captain, both times coming off pre-60, I'd like to try and avoid that. And I just feel like Diaz is more locked in for the 80 or 90. For what it's worth, I think they'll try and get as many of their like big names on the pitch at some point as possible if they are going to win the league that day. I think it will become a bit of a celebration if the game's wrapped up, and they'll probably get on your Trents if he's not started the game, get on your Gakpos, maybe even your Darwin as well. I don't know what his injury situation is at the moment, but all sorts could come on in the last 10, 15 minutes just to get everyone that into that celebration mood if they are in that position. Diaz, I think, is the one alongside Salah that probably stays on the longest. And again, I'm just trying to spike the higher X-mins to try and give me just a marginal chance of a more of a goal or an assist in the late stages. But yeah, I don't mind Jota whatsoever. If people are pretty bullish on him starting, then you could take a chance on him getting 80 or 90 as well.
Yeah, why not? Why not? I quite like that if you did here, and I think it's the minutes thing, isn't it? And you're pretty keen on just trying to follow through with that sort of I'm going to focus on I'm going to be a next minutes acolyte from here on out, which kind of makes a lot of sense really, given what you said earlier on.
I'm done with the pain.
Yeah, done with the pain. Fine. You've still got another 5 game weeks to go, I'm afraid, mate.
Yeah.
So a few comments in the chat. As Lulu says, I'm struggling to get on the Palmer bandwagon. Dan says I don't have Palmer in either. Andrew says Palmer's no for me.
I get it.
12 foot kick against Everton, low scoring at best, I think. The unstoppable force meets the immovable object potentially. And Tom in the chat actually said Palmer's an absolute lock for me. So
Dividing opinion.
He's an absolute lock for me because I'm not on free hit. So he's going to be in my team. He'll probably be in my team for the rest of the year, guys. As you said earlier on quite astutely, Sam, who knows when bad form becomes good form? Exactly what is it? And I think that there's plus and minuses. If you feel like you really fancy a third forward, so you fancy an Evan Nilsson or something like that on top of the Isaac and Cunha, who I think are regulation for this week. And I think Palmer becomes the full guy almost. Talk about Bumo and Forest situation in a minute. But Palmer, I don't know. Basically on a free hit, I don't know. You can kind of look at it and think, okay, he's a player who's been well owned throughout the course of the season. So maybe that might make you think, oh, it's a big differential to go without him. I'm not saying that everyone's thinking this, but it might be sort of a heuristic to just think that that's what's going on. But the reality is that actually a lot of people sold this week in terms of people who aren't going through to free hit this week. So if you bench boosted last week and you're kind of running through this week for you've got some sort of master plan galaxy brain thing going on, probably sold Palmer, and I think that a lot of free hitters are also going to take notice of the things that you've noticed, that he's not done anything for a long time. The last goal was that goal against Bournemouth way back when. Ooh, we're talking about game week 21, which is January. Yeah, and I captained him for that one. So I think that a lot of people will look at Palmer and think, ooh, it's just not worth it. He's just looked so terrible, but you've got your 90-minute thing if you're an ex-Mins acolyte like Sam has become. And you've also kind of, I suppose, got that sort of the insurance, I guess, that he's on penalties and on a lot of set pieces for Chelsea. So I don't know. It kind of feels like he's a decent enough pick, and because there's opportunities, a lot of people won't go there because of all the factors I've just mentioned.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, who are we to say when form comes and goes? Look, I completely understand, by the way, why people would be tempted to go without him, because output has been very poor for a long time and something just isn't clicking with Chelsea generally at the moment. However, he is a quality player, and although the ball hasn't been going in the back of the net for him, I don't think we'd be even having this conversation if in the last 10 or so game weeks he'd been given and scored a couple of penalties, which would have nothing to do with him, would just be a little bit of good fortune, let's say. But that has happened for several of the players that we'll talk about today. Salah hasn't scored an open play goal in, I think it's 9 weeks now, but we aren't having the same conversation about him because in that time, he's actually still scored goals. They just happen to be penalties. So I think with Palmer, he's been a bit unfortunate that the dry spell has coincided with a dry spell of penalties as well. And also he's created a lot that his teammates also haven't finished. So although he's got 3 assists in this time, he's probably been a bit unfortunate not to get a little bit more than that. So look, it's a lot of factors. I wouldn't put anyone off of going against him because at the end of the day, form does exist. There's something going on there. But what I'm trying very badly to say at the moment is that although it exists, we can't necessarily predict when it will come or go. So for me, Palmer's in at the moment. Just a quick question though, Tom, because it's just registered to me now. It probably should have registered earlier. When did Chelsea play their Conference League semi-final?
God, I don't know. I think it's coming up, but I don't know
Wouldn't it be in the same midweek as
Thursday? It's next Thursday. So Saturday to Thursday is the gap. It's the early game on Saturday, so I think it's probably nothing to worry about.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe just one eye on that then, but yeah, it'll probably be okay.
I think you're probably okay for that one.
Yeah.
No, I think that he would definitely divide opinion because of how he's been doing. I think that James on Planet made a really good point that spool this back about 6 months and he'd be in the captaincy conversation this week.
Yeah.
And there's no chance anyone's even considering that. Well, but maybe there's an odd maverick out there who's going to do it. But there's no chance that he's going to be in anyone's sort of thoughts for captaincy this week. So yeah, that's interesting. The only other thing to mention here is Bumo. I think it's fine on a free hit, honestly. Forest, buying Forest players, mentioned Woods, and there's obviously the Forest defence, who we didn't mention earlier on. The big factor with them is that you're going into this week with a game that's going to happen before they play in terms of being your FPL asset. And I think that to me just rules them out straight away because you end up kind of making space for a player. I don't think it's going to be any kind of midfielders you're going to be buying in or anything like that. I think you're going to be looking at Mateta just scored. It's a red arrow on my red arrow on my free hit. But yeah, you're not going to be looking at here's what it is. You're not going to be looking at any of these players. Basically, I think on your free hit.
No, I don't think so. I did have a brief flirtation with Chris Wood, but I just think that given the other striker options out there at the moment, I think there's just better. I do prefer maybe attacking Forest, given they've got the fixture beforehand. They'll definitely be focused on that first. They could come out of it maybe a little bit leggy. Although, of course, they are still fighting for Champions League, so it's not like they'll be taking this one easy. But Brentford will have had, I think, is it like 12 days rest between games to get to this point? So Mbeumo is about as close to a guaranteed 90-minute man as physically possible. He's on set pieces, he's on penalties, he's playing out of his skin this season. The data's great. And yeah, Forest defensively have actually been pretty poor on the stats recently. So yeah, honestly, he was one of the first players that came in, and I'm not really even worried about him. I think he's 100% locked in now.
Yeah, no, I'm well with you on that. And up front, finally, I think Isaac and Cunha are the two, and I just don't know about the third one. I like Evan Nilsson. I'm not a big fan. Someone in the chat asked about Raul. I'm not really huge on them. I think they're quite low on the list. I think you got Welbeck as your first sub, and I think that probably between Welbeck and maybe Evan Nilsson would be kind of the two that I'd be kind of pointing out. I really like Wissa. I think he's probably going to come in for me this week, but I think that overall I wouldn't be looking at them and thinking, yeah, I've got to buy them.
I think Wissa as a buy, if you're using free transfers, is probably the perfect one to get. Or Evan Nilsson, both of which, because Evan Nilsson could have a double game week in 36 potentially. Although, yeah, if you're using transfers, maybe wait a week on Evan Nilsson on that logic, unless you desperately wanted him this week. But yeah, Wissa as a buy, fantastic. He always gets forgotten about by 90% of the player base, and he's just ticking along so consistently this season. Absolutely brilliant player. If he's still at Brentford next year, I will want him in my game week 1 side almost inevitably. And yeah, I think it would maybe be a bit bold for me to go double Brentford on a free hit away at Forest, considering Forest's league position. It just, whilst they've been a bit poor defensively recently, I think it might just be a little bit too far. So one feels like enough. But yeah, Wissa is a good option. And then it comes down to players like an Evan Nilsson in a head-to-head versus Kluivert. I think that's pretty tight. Which out of those two do you think would be your preferred Bournemouth?
Evan Nilsson's been the underlying data is so good for the per 90 recently, and United are struggling against that kind of forward right now. God knows what centre back pairing they're going to have out. It's tough, isn't it? Because you've to use the classic Nick line, because you've got Kluivert with the penalties to give you that extra insurance, but you got Evan Nilsson who's got the underlying data. Probably would err on the side of caution with Kluivert, but it is very close between the two of them at the moment. That's for sure.
Is there any worry whatsoever that Kluivert, he's just played 90, so maybe not so much of a worry now, but he has just come back from a little bit of a fatigue-based injury. Is there any chance perhaps that there's an issue that we might need to worry about, or do we think that's now a thing of the past, considering he played 90?
I think it's probably something that you might see him play 60, 70, but I think given the...
that worries me. I want those X-Mens.
Yeah. But Evan Nilsson also is liable to 60, 70, isn't he?
Yeah, he can be, yeah.
So it's something to bear in mind. I do think they'll beat United fairly comfortably, given that their eyes are firmly focused elsewhere. It's just getting the right one, really. Maybe a return for your man Semenyo, Sam.
Yeah. Although, to be fair, there are models and things out there that are suggesting Semenyo. I don't think I can do it to myself. I'm just not there on him. I either want the penalties or I want Evan Nilsson, who has been objectively a very good striker this season for them. So I think Semenyo would probably be my third favourite Bournemouth attacker, and that's where that ends for me personally. A few other attackers though. I really like Welbeck. I like Strand Larsen as well, potentially as a double up for Wolves up top, as Dan in the chat has mentioned. I don't mind that whatsoever. I think it's likely that one of Cunha or Strand Larsen comes off early, but I don't know which one necessarily. I'm a little bit worried about Cunha. based on Bellegarde and the fact that they could be looking towards next season a little bit. And maybe if Bellegarde is fit, Cunha sits on the bench or gets 20 odd at the end. Any worries there?
I don't think so, because I just feel like I spoke about this with Ross as well. It just kind of feels like Cunha is just the better player, and like it depends on the nature of Bellegarde's injury. It sounds like there's a bit of a link up to Menetzi and Larson, so it means you've got that one spot which is either Cunha or Bellegarde. And given the Cunha, yeah, okay, last game Wolves fans say didn't play that particularly well, and in terms of underlying data, the fact that he got free bonus of basically winning a free kick for Sarabia to score does tend to imply that he had a good game. And so I think we're probably going to be okay with that one. Dan in the chat has said about Larson and Cunha as a double up front. I've seen quite a few people actually go there. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I was just mentioning it a little bit. So I think Strand Larson is a player that's been very impressive recently. That link up with Menetzi, as you said, is something that Wolves fans are really excited by. And I think they've been talking about it quite a lot recently in press conferences and on forums and all of this as well. So I don't mind it whatsoever. I do wonder if doubling up just removes it's maybe a lot of eggs in one basket when there are also other good options out there, like home to West Ham for Welbeck, who will probably get 80, 90 minutes and has penalties. Strand Larson obviously doesn't have that benefit. Jimenez, by that logic as well, potentially. You've also got Evan Nilsson, you've got Chris Wood, there's a lot of like penalty taking strikers out there, Evan Nilsson aside, who should get good minutes. And I wonder if doubling up on a team that they score a decent amount of goals, but they're not exactly a top half side. I wonder if it's just looking at the fixture too much and not enough at the strength of the team. And when you've got the options of Brighton, who are top half Premier League sides or very, very close to there or thereabouts, and Evan Nilsson, Nottingham Forest with Wood as well, all of these are strikers in better teams. Andrew in the chat says Leicester are bad. They're really bad. So I do get it. I guess I'm looking at my team and already thinking, well, I'm doubled up on Wolves. Do I really want to triple up? And then I've only got 8 spots remaining for other teams. So I don't know. It feels maybe like a little bit much for me, but I can understand going there. I just think maybe like a Welbeck or an Evan Nilsson is someone that I potentially prefer. Cunha or Strand Larson, I don't know which, but probably one or the other for me.
Yeah, is it? But Leicester is probably the but to that, isn't it? Really, and you could kind of think, right, okay. Again, maybe I don't have Palmer. Maybe I'd go with the double Wolves attack. Paul in the chat really likes Welbeck as a pickup, which again I think is fine. I really like that game, and I think we'll come on to that in a minute actually when we come to best transfers and the Kneejerk. But yeah, lots of free hit chat there for you. Probably more questions than answers, I'm afraid. But I do think that there's a very strong core that you can put together for a free hit this week, and it does seem like it's one of those things where you should be kind of in quite a good position, barring an absolute disaster. Like was it a Reguilon red card last year, which kind of set the train in motion for a terrible outcome for those on free hit? A freak outcome like that could happen, but I very much doubt it.
Yeah, cool. And I think on that as well, there's a really good core of 30-ish players, and any combination of those 30 could end up being the correct one. There's probably also a combination of 11 there that will do really, really badly, but that doesn't mean the decision making was incorrect. I think there's 30 that we've talked about ish, probably a few others we forgot that could very easily be the top performers this game week, and it's just trying to get on the right side of which of those 30 it actually ends up being on the day. But yeah, I think we're all playing within the same quite limited pool this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, all right. Let's move on to the rest of it. So just further previews for this week. I think a lot of it is just going to be based on people like me who don't have a free hit. What else you could possibly do? Knee-jerk time, I think it's just probably worth mentioning. Basically farewell to Palace. I'd be very happy to get rid of a lot of them. But I think it's not Kneejerk in essence. It's more about kind of a comment on how there's certain turning points in the season and how maybe this is one of the last ones to reinvigorate the template. There are 3 of these players in, and part of the reasoning for me to free hit this week was also linked to kind of removing them a week earlier than everyone else does, for what happens going forward. Yeah, I mean, Mateta, Sarr, / Eze, and Munoz have been part of kind of the core for a lot of people for a long time. But we're getting into that point, aren't we, Sam, where things do change, and for the run in, I think that maybe because their fixtures aren't particularly amazing, it is time to kind of let go.
Yeah, I think so. And I think your strategy moving forward, the free hit, so you can look at getting rid of Palace a week earlier than most, is actually a really good one. And I'm kind of jealous. So yeah, Palace, obviously they've drawn level to Arsenal tonight. As we're recording, we don't know what the final result is just yet, but they've not been too bad, I suppose, in this double game week overall. But generally the fixtures don't look too hot. There are definitely teams to target out there with better fixtures and possibly players that are cheaper, better data than your Matetas, your Sars at the moment in particular. So I think it is now time to move off. We've got a very limited amount of game weeks left to target. So hanging on to a double or a triple Palace when they don't have the best set of fixtures might be a little bit much. If 1 or 2 of them are hanging around for a week or 2 more, it's not the end of the world, I don't think. But by the time most of us have finished our free hit in game week 34 and we're looking at our teams in 35, I think they're going to be right near the top of the pile to be getting rid of very quickly. And if you're not free hitting this week, like yourself, Tom, obviously it's a great opportunity to be moving them on now.
Yeah, I think that's probably about right, basically. And we'll come to this a bit more next week. Obviously, for obvious reasons, I think this is probably a bit of a short piece. And in terms of the transfers in, yeah, Cunha and Bumo unsurprisingly dominating the top of the tree. I think that if you are not free hitting, you need to look at your transfer situation when you're buying in Cunha, because they've got Man City kind of following that the game against Leicester, which is now a 1. Sam, it's now a 1. We're finally seeing 1s being used. True like at scale is there. But after that, they've got Man City, Brighton, good game. Palace actually quite a good game. Then Brentford 38. So I think probably an okay sort of hold. It's just the fact that you're probably going to be keeping Marmoush. You're probably going to be keeping Isaac. Actually, maybe not. Maybe we're moving Isaac on for game week 36 to 38, which aren't the best games. So it's one of those things that you need to kind of size up, I guess. But like Bumo is a nailed on kind of buy-in for me. I'm not particularly interested in Chris Wood, who's coming in for third for a lot of people this week, although the transfers in are kind of low because of what's going on. And on the other side, like some Mateta, Marmoush after disappointment, I'm sure a lot of that is kind of just based on the 4 points and a bit of reactionary stuff. João Pedro being sold as well still, and like some Munoz and Saka, like Blanca's kind of going out. But yeah, Cunha, if you were kind of looking to buy, I suppose that I just kind of prefer Wissa over Cunha for the shorter term, and that's kind of what kind of screams out as being kind of worth a buy to me. The 2 of them being Wissa and Bumo have a very good relationship. You've got the Forest game next, which isn't amazing, but then you've got Man United, Ipswich, Fulham, Wolves as the final 4, and it kind of feels like having the 2 of them is something that I'm quite interested in.
Yeah, same here. And by the time I'm off of my free hit, I think both of them will be right at the top of my buy list. So yeah, with Wissa, I think if you're using free transfers or just transferring in general this week, Wissa probably leaps ahead of most other strikers because of the run in after game week 34. So in your situation, Tom, I think it makes a ton of sense. He makes less sense on a free hit, but then, yeah, when you get to game week 35, fantastic. Whereas Cunha is the exact opposite. It's this week's fixture that you're probably buying him for mainly, and then afterwards, not so much. So yeah, transfer wise, less hot on Cunha, much hotter on the likes of Brentford boys, Mbeumo and Wissa, and maybe Evan Nilsson, Cliver as well, potentially. Obviously, Bournemouth potentially could have a double later on down the line. Quick word for David in the chat, who also correctly mentions that Palace could have a potential double. By the time we get to game week 35, we should know who will be doubling in game week 36 because the FA Cup results will be out of the way. So we'll know whether or not Palace are safe to be selling ahead of game week 35. Not the case in your situation, of course, Tom, anyone making transfers this week. But I think it is slightly less likely that Palace have a double, given that they're the underdogs in the Villa semi-final. So you can kind of play the odds a little bit there. And who knows, even if they do have a double, a lot of them didn't exactly perform this week. So they might not necessarily be like must-haves come game week 36 either.
The only one that I, again, to give a window into my particular transfer plans, that I'm surprised isn't particularly high after scoring, and for people who aren't in the free hit, who aren't playing free hit, is Bowen. So I really like Bowen actually for the final. I think that all of the final 5 are really, really good fixtures. So Brighton away, I think there's definitely a lot of unpredictability about that. Brighton, I think, are probably in lower next motivation after their season seems to have kind of fallen off a little bit. And then Spurs, Man United, who are on the same level, I think, as the relegated teams in terms of motivation for the league. Forest and Ipswich. You're going to have to read the tea leaves a little bit on West Ham. Like, are they going to want to end the season on a high and get that momentum into the next season? There's a big gap between the two. I've seen someone say that. I was like, maybe not. But a really good talismanic fixture player for the rest of the year. He's one that I'm really interested in buying this week. And elsewhere, it's not particularly something that I'm all over. I've seen a lot of people kind of buying Trent as well in the underlying in the numbers in terms of players being brought in. And just mentioned earlier on, I'm just not entirely trusting of the minutes really for Trent this week. He's not in your free hit, and it kind of, to me, feels a bit like, I don't know. I think there's enough nagging doubt for me to think maybe not.
Yeah, I'm with you on Trent now. He was in my initial draft when I was feeling a little bit more punty on it. But the more I think about it, the more I can't really see very strong minutes this week. I think there's a chance he starts, but he's been out a little while. He could easily just get 30 off the bench again. And again, that kind of celebration aspects. Now Arsenal have just drawn. I think they might only, they only need a draw on over the weekend to confirm the title now?
Yeah, only 1 point now.
1 point. So regardless, they should be celebrating come the end of the game. Is it maybe, okay, Bradley's the fitter of the two right now, Trent can have 30 at the end to celebrate with the fans once they've won the trophy? Possibly. So yeah, I think I've just been scared off of Trent a little bit too much now. And even if he did start, he could get 55, 60. And again, Slot doesn't mind ruining FPL managers' dreams and taking players off before 60. So yeah, I'm maybe just a little bit off of him now. Bowen, as you mentioned, I think a very good buy if you're making transfers rather than free hitting this week. Like you said, love the fixtures between now and the end of the season. He's got everything you could want in an FPL asset, barring the fact that the team aren't playing fantastically right now, but he's as talismanic as you can get. So I think it balances out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, interesting stuff. Wait, bold claims. I've actually scored a point, Sam.
You have, yeah. Do you want to go first since you scored?
A small happiness hedge, a small glimmer of light in an otherwise very bleak game week, which is that Salah blanks versus Leicester came through. So it's now 4-3, and our hit rate, Sam, is above 20%. 1 in 5, where we were last year, and with 21% with 7 hits over 33 weeks, which is lovely.
Dizzying heights.
Yeah, I know. We are clairvoyants. We are tarot card readers. We are psychics. Probably have the same hit rate.
Well, one of us is.
I think. Yeah. And it did quite work out for you, though, did it?
No, although it wasn't brilliant. I went Isak to outscore Saka and KDB. I think past Sam had a bit of a sense of humor, but all 3 of which were very disappointing. And given I own 2 of them and triple captain 1 of them, I can't exactly say that I'm too happy about this not coming off. But yeah, unfortunately, I am 1 behind again. So 4-3 to you, Tom. But honestly, at this point, I'm just glad to see us scoring points in this. So yeah, 7 points across the season for us, and I'm claiming all of yours as joint WGTA points.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fine to do.
I think that's right.
Yeah, we're in dire straits right now. And then this for the week ahead.
Yeah, so I've obviously, as you've seen my free hit draft, I'm going with penalty takers FC. So as my season's going exactly as you would expect, no penalties to be awarded in game week 34 is my bold claim. I don't think we've ever done a bold claim quite like that one before, but I imagine that's pretty bold. Across the 8 fixtures, is it? No penalties, I think is fairly unlikely, but given that I'm targeting penalty takers, I think it's almost a given. So I'm looking forward to my point.
Take it. Mine is leaning up to earlier on. Palmer top scores, but blank game week 34. Why not?
I like it.
Why not? I think that counts as bold now. Actually, a few 6 months back, you'd be saying no. We've got to rethink that. But now, I think I'm fine with that.
Definitely fine. Yeah.
Fun from this week. Best captains before we go to our teams and plans. Isaac versus Salah, I think. But I think the contextual factors probably do lean most people towards just captaining the Egyptian king, don't they?
I think so. It's a shame that Isaac hasn't come into this in a little bit hotter form. If he'd scored a couple against Villa, I think it would be a split pin. But given he didn't, and there's been a few little injury bits and bobs over the last few weeks, I think it just throws it further towards Salah, even though Salah's not been in the greatest of form himself. Like you say, that narrative is kind of working overdrive now that the league is on the line. Salah should get 90, is on penalties, has been unbelievably good across the season. Even though he's dipped a bit, it's still Salah. And I think Isaac would have to be right at the top of his game and scoring week in, week out, 90 minutes guaranteed, all of those factors really working in his favour to make this a really tight call for me. And given that those factors don't currently exist, I think Salah being Salah just edges him out at the moment. But yeah, look, Isaac again at home to Ipswich is never a bad option. I just think Salah against a Spurs side who, again, not concentrating on the game, the league's on the line. It's got Salah hat-trick written all over it, hasn't it? So that's where I'm going.
Yeah, I think that's probably about right. I just, there's definitely a part of me now that I just like, oh, screw it, I'm just going to captain Isaac. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely opportunity, I think, given the fact that most people will kind of lean into the context and throw it on Salah, who himself has hardly covered himself in glory. So I'm kind of tempted to a little bit, actually. You know,
I think at your rank,
yeah, I'm very tempted to.
It's one of those swings that you could get away with.
It's a very 50-50 call this week. I think that basically everyone on free hit is going to captain Salah, which is going to be quite scary. And I think that's something that I need to kind of bear in mind. But yeah, we need to see, really. A lot of it's kind of quite situational now in terms of where you're going to go with your captaincy this week. But yeah, I think the context is going to push most people just to kind of go, right, okay, Salah, remontada from poor form. Off he goes, hat trick. They win, and they lift this Premier League trophy in front of the cop. So yeah, I don't know. I kind of think I might just kind of be like, right, okay, I'm not going to tank my season here, but it might just be like is a hat trick, and all is good. But yeah, as you said, it's a shame he's not coming into it in better form, really. And the X minutes, I think, have probably nosedived a tiny bit. So if I'm channeling this newfound Sam, I think maybe I'm going to maybe I just go the X minutes on Salah.
Yeah, I don't mind it. Are there any others in the conversation? Obviously, you talked about Palmer, maybe Cunha if you think the minutes are good against Leicester, but it is pretty much these two this week, right?
Yeah. It's I can't really see much. Like I think that yeah, it's very contextual, but I can't really see much kind of call to go against these two as it is. You might find the Maverick kind of come through and kind of go, right, you know, you're looking for someone's maybe out there looking for this week's Trossard and kind of going, right, okay, maybe a Cunha, it might be something else like that, which I do kind of understand. It's just that given what's happening and the two teams and who they're facing and the two players and what they can possibly do, their ceilings, it does feel quite difficult to go against either of them. I think that you're probably looking at Salah being kind of 160, 170% EO. So that's something to really bear in mind, that you're a player down. I think Isak's probably going to just creep over 100. So yeah, it's really something to bear in mind, and it kind of takes a lot from it will take a lot for you to go against Salah, basically a lot of cojones, as they say.
Indeed. Right. I think we've already looked at my free hit. To summarize, I'll quickly run over it as a summary in case any of you forgot. Alisson in goal, at home Spurs. That is open for debate. I've discussed it earlier on who that's with. Livramento and Shah, a double up Newcastle defence alongside Ait Nouri. In the midfield, it is Salah, Diaz, Salah captain, Mbermo, Palmer, Cliver, really punting on the ex-Pens, ex-Mins there. Isak and Cunha up front, Welbeck, Cucurella and Sessegnon on the bench. Leno also my bench goalkeeper. It could end up being a combination of Pope and Cucurella instead of Alisson and Livramento. That's kind of the balance I'm trying to figure out at the moment. Outsiders, Barnes, possibly Bowen, possibly Sessegnon might creep in at some point, but I'm feeling okay with it at the moment. I think I'm getting there.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely fine. Honestly, I don't really like. There's never any glaring errors for anybody at this level, really, at this time of the season, and everything's quite well reasoned. There may be some sort of messing around with, maybe, as you said, Cucurella could come in, but I mean, that's a really sound free hit. I don't really see much wrong with that, and it just depends on where you become more bullish and more kind of less interested in certain players as the week goes on. But yeah, good to have a reference point, I suppose, on Wednesday where you were, and then take it from there.
Yeah, 100%. Yours is probably more interesting, Tom. Obviously, we haven't looked at your full team ahead of Game Week 34 yet. How are you setting up, and what are you thinking transfer-wise?
So I'm on 8 players. I've got Jose Sarr, so it's maybe almost definitely 7, I think, in goal.
Do we know he's out?
We don't, but I mean,
Okay.
we'll see. Bentley kept his clean sheet against Man United, so you just never know really with these things. But I'm luckily it's the goalkeeper. So yeah, the impact, if I had to pick one player in my team to not have a game, it would always be the keeper, so that's fine. At the back, I've got a full complement of Livramento, Milenkovic, and Dunk. So I've got to play Milenkovic, even though they've got the semi mid on the weekends, and it is what it is. In midfield, it's Murphy, Palmer, Salah, and Blanca, and up front is Isak, blank. So 7 players. I think I'm going to probably take a -8 this week, just accept the loss and kind of just try to build a team which looks good for the rest of the year. And that basically comprises of Mateta and Sarr, as per the Kneejerk, going. Mateta goes out for Wissa, Sarr goes out for Bumo. And I think I'm going to just take -8 and get rid of Asensio. Honestly, I think it's there could be a double in 36, yada, yada, yada. But one of those players that is very high on my what list, and I quite like the cut of Bowen's jib for the rest of the year, and so I think that I'm probably going to do that, and that will fill me 11 with Sarr being questionable. So that will fill me 10 outfield players. I think I'll just go with that. Take the L this week. I'm expecting kind of a fairly decent red arrow, even though the team that I would get at the end would look quite good if variance does go my way, which hasn't for weeks. Then it would be nice. But if assuming it doesn't go my way, I think I'm probably expecting a bit of red arrow this week. But I think that was kind of an eventuality that I went into eyes wide open if the free hit didn't pay off, which it hasn't. So yeah, here we are. At the end of the season, with me in a similar boat to you, Sam, just thinking, you know what, let's just kind of just see what we can do in terms of picks to try to kind of ameliorate the situation. I think I'm probably going to be too chicken not to captain Salah, honestly, just because of what could happen. But I mean, time is running short for going against the chalk captain. So it's something that's definitely on my mind. I'm going to have to look and try to spool ahead to places where there might be kind of potential differentials, because I haven't got any chips left, and no one else will after this week. And captaincy is going to be sort of the mini chip which you've got left to try to differentiate. And it feels like, next week you've got Marmoush at home versus Wolves. Week after that, you've got potential double for City, which is Southampton and Bournemouth. So that's going to be on Marmoush again. And 37, see what happens. 38, see what happens. But I mean, I'm running out of differential opportunities, Sam. So maybe is that versus Ipswich is one that I'm going to have to take. And so that might be where I go. We need to see. But yeah, I think that -8 after doing Ross's pod, after doing this pod, after having a run today and thinking about it, is where I'm going to end up.
Yeah, and I think it will put you in a nice position moving forwards as well. So even if the -8 doesn't necessarily pay off this week, which it could, it definitely could, it will probably pay off in the next few weeks and put you a couple of transfers ahead of me and a lot of us on free hit as well. So yeah, I like it. Maybe short-term pain, long-term gain. Fingers crossed. One of us needs to get top 100k. I'm hoping it will be you.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, it's just one of those things where sometimes you do have a bit of a like it's just been a very difficult season. There's a lot of luck involved, and I think that a lot of the time we have. There's been there's been some unforced errors, but not loads. And it's been one of those things where you look at it and you think, well, would I do the same thing again without the benefit of Captain Hindsight? Probably. And I think that probably does inform the fact that the process was probably okay. It's just the outcome wasn't. And to some people that can be like, oh yeah, well that just means you're SHIT. To me, that kind of means that you can have peace of mind about the fact that you've approached it probably in the best way you possibly could to put yourself in a position to get lucky. It's just those luck that one sort of important factor hasn't really, gone your way. But yeah, there's always next year, Sam.
Yeah, of course. And we'll be back with you next year, obviously, in the hope that we get our top 10, top 1, maybe even top 100 in the world. That would be great. Anyway, in the meantime, we will be back with you next week, much more soon than next season. We have been Who Got the Assist. You can find us on socials. Blue Sky is WGTA or FPL Pricey, WGTA_FPL or FPL Pricey on Twitter. Instagram and Threads, it's WGTA.FPL, FPL Pricey on there as well. And if you did enjoy the pod, if you could give us a follow on those socials, that would be fantastic. Also, if you could give the pod a 5-star rating wherever you're listening. And of course, leave a like and hit subscribe on YouTube. That would be greatly appreciated. Thank you all so much for listening in to our misery and helping us along the way. And we'll be back with you again next week for yet more misery.
Yeah, hopefully the misery doesn't mean that we're not entertaining. That's what I tell my other half all the time anyway. Yeah, thanks for listening. Feel a little bit better. Thanks, Sam, although I'm still processing the raw emotion from getting a red arrow at the last minute there. I hope just you think about Blank Gameweek 34 and what is now thankfully the last of our more formulaic trio of podcasts that we had to do as the game weeks fell. We had to do it. Is kind of the way it is. Next week, we're back into deep dive mode, looking into motivation of teams on the beach and how we can target teams who have less motivation than others as we enter the run-in, asking if we can, and indeed should, take some serious punts as we reach the end. And I don't know about you, Sam, but I think we probably should, because our seasons are absolutely in the mud. Back on the usual slot next time. We'll see you next Thursday.
Oh, it's a goal. Who got the assist? Who got the assist?